On our wedding night, I sat alone in the bridal chamber until dawn. The phoenix coronet, the red wedding robe, the candles carved with dragon and phoenix, all had burned down to ashes. My husband, Xianxia, Marquis of Dingbei, finally arrived. Behind him followed a woman, her clothes disheveled, her hairpiece crooked, Madame Wang, the wet nurse of his deceased nephew. With a face full of shame, he said he had been drunk the night before, had slept in the guest room, and in the dim candlelight mistook Madame Wang, who came to make the bed, for me. Mingwei, I only committed the kind of mistake any drunken man might commit. That was his explanation. As soon as he finished, Madame Wang collapsed to her knees before me, sobbing brokenly. I deserve death. It is all my fault, it has nothing to do with the Marquis. Now that I've defiled the wedding night of the Marquis and his wife, even if I am sold or drowned, I will utter no complaint. I only beg Madame not to blame the Marquis. While she wept, she stole glances at Xianxia, acting with pitiful devotion. A touching little drama between master and servant, truly. I sat in my deep red wedding gown, looking down at the woman kneeling on the floor, then at my good husband wearing shame and reluctance on his face. Then I spoke, my voice calm but echoing through the bridal chamber. In that case, drown her. I did not raise my voice, yet the words fell like nails driven through wood, piercing the ears of everyone present. The air froze. Madame Wang stiffened instantly, her pear blossom in the rain, tears draining from her face, her eyes widening in terror. Xianxia's embarrassed expression solidified as well, replaced by shock and a flicker of panic. Mingyue, what did you just say? I sat upright on the wedding bed draped in red brocade, my gaze sweeping past him and landing on Madame Wang. She said it herself, whether being sold or drowned, she would not complain. As the mistress of this household, naturally I must fulfill such loyal devotion. Someone, I called out, raising my voice. 2 matron servants of my dowry stepped in. They belonged to my natal household, they only followed my orders. Madam. Do as I said. Gag her. Take her to the lotus pond in the rear courtyard. Drown her. My voice did not tremble, as though I were commenting on the weather. Madame Wang finally realized I was not joking. I truly intended to take her life. She screamed in panic, scrambling across the floor to clutch Xianxia's leg, begging hysterically. Marquis. Marquis, save me. I didn't mean it. I truly know my wrong. Madam, spare me. I won't dare again. Xianxia's face completely changed. He looked at me, his voice carrying a hint of command. Mingyue, stop making trouble. Madame Wang, she once cared for my nephew. She does not deserve death. Oh. I arched a brow. Making trouble. So in his eyes, I was the one making trouble. I stood up. My phoenix coronet and robe chimed softly with my movement, a clear, mocking sound. Marquis, on our wedding night, you committed adultery with a wet nurse in the guest estate, leaving me alone in an empty bridal chamber. At dawn, you brought her before me and acted out a scene of drunken misunderstanding. And now that I grant her the death she begged for, you accuse me of making trouble. My gaze swept slowly across Xianxia and Madame Wang, the corner of my lips curling into an icy smile. So then, what is the truth? Did the Marquis truly mistake someone due to drunkenness? Or have the two of you long been unable to restrain yourselves? One question, like a blade drawn from its sheath, struck the heart of the matter. Xianxia's breath faltered. His eyes dodged mine, refusing to meet my gaze. He was exposed. That one brief moment of panic betrayed him completely. Madame Wang trembled uncontrollably, she had not expected me to act outside the usual pattern. Most new mistresses, faced with such a scandal, would either swallow their humiliation for the sake of face, or create a noisy scene. But I remained cold, like a judge pronouncing a sentence. Mingyue, I truly drank too much. He continued stubbornly. Madame Wang, she was only momentarily foolish. Why must you force us into a corner like this? Force them into a corner. I laughed, cold and sharp. Very well. If the Marquis believes I am being unreasonable, then I will simply stop being the mistress of this household. The entire room fell silent. Xianxia jerked his head up, disbelief filling his eyes. Xin Mingyue, do you know what you are saying? Divorce. You would demand divorce over something so small. My gaze on him was frigid. Small. Marquis of Dingbei, this marriage was granted by the emperor himself. I am the legitimate daughter of the Shen family, the Duogua household. On our wedding night, you defiled the emperor's grace, committed lewd acts with a servant, and trampled upon the honor of both the Shen family and the royal house. And in your eyes, this is small. My voice was not loud, yet each word fell with the weight of 1,000 caddies. Color drained from Xianxia's face, alternating between white and green. He had never imagined I would go this far. In his mind, I, Xin Mingyue, future Marchioness of Dingbei, would endure humiliation for the sake of status, secretly deal with Madame Wang, and allow him to maintain the facade of a harmonious marriage. He was wrong. The people of the Shen family have never been ones to fight amongst themselves. Someone, I commanded without looking at him. To my dowry matrons, take my visiting card, return to Duogua Manor, and invite my eldest brother. Bring household guards immediately. Tell him the Dingbei Marquis is steeped in corruption and filth. Tell him Xin Mingyue seeks divorce at once and asks him to bring me home. And bring out the full inventory of my dowry. Item by item, record everything clearly. If even a single coin is missing, I will demand an explanation. Yes, my lady. The matron's eyes gleamed as they received the order and strode out. Xianxia was completely thrown into panic. Events had spiraled beyond his control. What he assumed was a petty inner courtyard dispute was now turning into a storm between two powerful households, even threatening to shake the court. Stop. He barked, trying to halt them. Swish. Another matron stepped before him, blocking his way with a sharp, imposing glare. Marquis, mind yourself. Xianxia stared at the formidable woman, then at my cold expression, stunned. He had never seen such a confrontation. Wasn't conflict between women supposed to be about tears, jealousy, and fighting for favor? How had it become a ledger of debts and a clean severing of ties? Madame Wang sat on the floor in dazed terror. She had assumed, with the Marquis's favor behind her, that a scene of tearful devotion would force the bride to swallow her grievances, allowing her to rise. She never expected the new bride to feel nothing toward her. I did not intend to fight her. I intended to overturn the entire table. Xin Mingyue. Must you make this into something so big? Xianxia roared, his face flushing red. Doing this, for you, for me, for the Shen family and the Marquis, what good does it serve? Benefit. I let out a soft laugh. The benefit is that I will not spend the rest of my life with a deceitful man and a shameless servant. As for the Shen family and the Marquis, I paused, then pronounced each word clearly. The Shen family's honor was never obtained through meek endurance. It was carved out on the battlefield, blade by blade, arrow by arrow, by my father and my brother. And the Dingbei Marquis. Is it even worthy of discussing honor with the Shen family? The Duogua household moved with astonishing speed. In less than half an hour, the clatter of armored footsteps and the ringing of weapons echoed outside the Marquis gates. My brother, Xin Lingfeng, deputy commander of the imperial guards, entered in full battle armor, leading 2 squads of elite soldiers. Brother. Only when I saw him did the tension strung tight inside me finally loosen. Xin Lingfeng strode straight to me, glanced at my still intact wedding attire, then at Madame Wang's disheveled state and Xianxia's darkened face. Fury erupted in his eyes, blazing like wildfire. Well done, Marquis of Dingbei. He did not spare Xianxia another look. He only turned to me and said coldly, Mingyue, do not fear. Your brother has come to take you home. Xianxia's face had turned pitch black. The elite soldiers of the Duogwa household, men who had truly stepped onto the battlefield, now stood rigid in the courtyard, murderous intent filling the air until the Marquis servants barely dared to breathe. This was no longer a family quarrel. This was a blatant military threat. Commander Shin, what do you mean by this? Xianxia forced himself to maintain dignity. You storm into my Marquis with soldiers, do you intend to rebel? Shin Lingfeng looked as though he had just heard the funniest joke in the world. He slowly turned, sharp hawk-like eyes locking onto Xianxia, every inch of him radiating pressure. Rebel. Marquis Sua, you overestimate yourself. Today, I come on the orders of my father, Duke Shin, to bring our Shin family's daughter home. As for the soldiers. His gaze swept the courtyard, voice turning glacial. My sister's dowry includes 128 trunks of items bestowed by the emperor and the imperial household. To return them intact to the court, naturally we must have people to inventory and escort them, lest some petty thieves take advantage and tarnish the Shin family's name. Every word was a slap across Xianxia's face. He was being accused of failing to supervise his household, and perhaps of having sticky-fingered servants. My dowry matrons opened the list and began announcing loudly. A pair of East Sea pearls bestowed by His Majesty, intact. A Hatyen jade rui granted by Her Majesty, intact. For landscape scrolls by a master of the previous dynasty, part of the Duogwa dowry, intact. Each declaration was a crisp crack, landing straight across the Dingbei Marquisade's reputation. The surrounding servants murmured, casting looks of contempt and schadenfreude at Xianxia and Madame Wang. A groom who shared illicit relations with a wet nurse on his wedding night. A legitimate daughter of the Duogwa household demanding divorce on the spot. Soldiers arriving to reclaim and audit the imperial dowry. Such a scandal would spread through the capital before the day was over. The century-old reputation of the Dingbei Marquis was finished. Xianxia trembled, partly in rage, partly in fear. He wanted to stop them, but he was powerless. Shin Lingfeng's men had sealed the courtyard completely, none of his own people could get close. Madame Wang had already fainted from terror, dragged aside by two maidservants like a dead dog. I watched coldly, not a ripple in my heart. This was only the beginning. Xianxia, did you think this was merely about embarrassment? No. What I want is for you, and the family behind you, to never rise again. The dowry inventory concluded without a single missing item. Shin Lingfeng approached, removed his cloak, and draped it over my shoulders, covering the bright wedding gown. Mingyue, we're going home. I nodded and followed him. As we passed Xianxia, I stopped and turned slightly. He clenched his fists tightly, eyes bloodshot, glaring at me. Shin Mingyue, you will regret this. I smiled. The one who will regret it is you. With that, without looking back, I stepped through the gates of the Dingbei Marquis. From this moment on, I had nothing to do with this place. The Duogwa Manor was brightly lit. My father, Shin Wei, sat in the main seat wearing plain clothes, yet the austere authority of a man who had survived countless battles pressed heavier than any ceremonial robe. I recounted everything, without embellishment and without emotion. When I finished, the hall fell silent. Shin Lingfeng slammed a fist on the table, shouting in fury. Outrageous. Father, tomorrow I will submit a memorial to the court and request justice for our family. Father said nothing. He simply looked at me, deep eyes unreadable. Mingyue, he finally asked quietly, what do you intend to do? He knew I would never demand divorce on impulse. I met his gaze calmly. Father, submitting a memorial to accuse Xianxia, that is far too lenient. Shin Lingfeng froze. Too lenient. Disobeying imperial grace and defiling his household's honor is enough to have him removed from office. Brother, I shook my head, removal punishes only him. The Dingbei Marquis remains, a centuries-old clan that will eventually regain its footing. And since the root of this matter lies in the inner courtyard, our political enemies will accuse the Xin family of making a mountain out of a molehill, of abusing our power. A glimmer of approval flickered in Father's eyes. Then what do you propose? I drew a steady breath and stated the plan Mother and I had already prepared. Father, tomorrow in court, you must not denounce Xianxia. I met Father's eyes and spoke each word clearly. What you must do is present the vermilion iron pardon token bestowed by the late emperor, and request resignation. What? Xin Lingfeng shot to his feet. Resignation. Have you lost your mind? For Xianxia, Father should give up the title of Duke. Brother, sit, I said firmly. Father will not actually resign. I turned back to Father and continued. You must plead guilty before His Majesty. The charge is failing to discipline your children. You need only say, I failed to discipline my daughter, causing her to suffer unprecedented humiliation on her wedding day. Her husband has scorned the Emperor's grace. I am ashamed before the Emperor's benevolence and the late Emperor's trust. I no longer dare appear in court, and therefore request permission to retire. This will place our Xin family, I finished softly, in the position of the wronged and the repentant. Father's eyes grew brighter and brighter, he had fully understood my intent. I continued. In this way, the matter will no longer be seen as a private feud between the Xin family and the Dingbei Marquisate. It will become a state affair. Whether the loyalty of the empire's meritorious families is being chilled, and whether the royal family's dignity still stands. Xianxia's actions will no longer be mere moral failings. They will become a slap to the royal house, an insult that turns the hearts of loyal ministers cold. At that time, court officials will certainly step forward to defend Xianxia, accusing Father of overreacting, even attempting to pressure His Majesty. And that is exactly what we need. I rose and walked to the center of the hall, as though standing in tomorrow's imperial court. The more they insist this is a small matter, the more they reveal Xianxia's arrogance and disregard for imperial grace. The more memorials they submit to criticize us, the easier it will be to stir the sympathy and fury of the military commanders and the upright ministers. When that happens, Father need say nothing more, the rebuttal will come from those who truly understand righteousness. And in the end, whether to console you, a national duke holding military power, or to maintain the supreme dignity of the royal house, His Majesty will be forced to severely punish Xianxia. The punishment will no longer be a mere removal from office. It will be a decree personally issued by the Emperor, nailing the Dingbei Marquisate to the pillar of shame, forever unable to rise again. When I finished, the hall was silent. Xin Lingfeng stared at me, mouth open, as though meeting his younger sister for the first time. After a long moment, Father rose, walked toward me, and gently patted my shoulder. The earlier heaviness in his expression had vanished, replaced by a look both complicated and deeply satisfied. Good. You truly are the daughter of Xin Wei. We will do exactly as you say. A flash of battle-hardened sharpness flared in his eyes, then faded. I want to see who in court tomorrow dares to claim that humiliating a Xin daughter is a trifling matter. The next morning, Daqing Hall. The court assembled in neat rows. Morning light filtered through the carved windows, falling upon the brilliant gold of the imperial throne. Emperor Liu sat solemnly atop the Dayan seat. Xianxia also stood among the officials. He wore a freshly pressed court robe, but the dark circles beneath his eyes and the fatigue etched on his face could not be hidden. He had not slept all night. He had already prepared his excuses. Once Xin Wei submitted his memorial, he would immediately kneel, plead guilty, blame everything on drunkenness and misunderstanding, then let a few colleagues speak on his behalf. At most he would lose a month's salary, be confined for a few days, and the matter would pass. After all, punishing a hereditary marquis harshly over a trivial inner courtyard scandal was unreasonable. He secretly glanced at Shen Wei standing at the head of the military officials. Shen Wei's expression was unchanged, as though last night's events had never occurred. Xianxia quietly exhaled. It seemed Shen Wei still cared about the bigger picture. Court continued as usual. When the discussion of border affairs concluded and the eunuch was preparing to announce the end of session, Shen Wei acted. Holding a sandalwood box with both hands, he stepped out from the ranks, walked to the center of the hall, and knelt. A shock rippled through every official present. Shen Wei, the duke who commanded 300,000 soldiers, who had fought beside the late emperor, who held the vermilion iron pardon token, who did not need to kneel even before the emperor, was kneeling. Everyone had received his kindness. Everyone feared his authority. Yet today, he was on his knees. Xianxia felt his heart seize painfully in his chest. Even Emperor Liu was startled. Shen Wei, what is the meaning of this? Quickly, rise. But Shen Wei struck his forehead to the floor, his voice booming like a great bell. Your Majesty, this minister, is guilty. He raised the sandalwood box and opened it. Inside lay a gold-edged iron plaque. The vermilion iron pardon token. A collective gasp swept through the court. This item, bestowed by the late emperor, had never been shown publicly. For Shen Wei to present it today, what could warrant such a thing? Your Majesty. Shen Wei's voice carried deep sorrow. I, Shen Wei, have failed to discipline my household. My daughter suffered unprecedented humiliation on her wedding night. Her husband treated the imperial marriage decree with contempt, regarding the royal family's honor as nothing. I am ashamed to face your Majesty. Ashamed to face the late emperor's trust. With such lack of virtue, I no longer dare stand upon this court, nor command the army. I beseech your Majesty to reclaim the vermilion iron pardon token, and allow this old servant to retire in disgrace. Boom. His words struck like thunder. Every gaze shot instantly towards Xianxia. Xianxia's mind went blank, his entire body turning cold. He had calculated every possibility. Except this. Shen Wei had not accused him. Had not submitted a memorial. Instead, had used his own unprecedented merit as a bargaining chip. It was a killing blow. Emperor Liu's face darkened instantly. He fixed Xianxia with a gaze sharp as a blade. Marquis of Dingbei, is what the Duke says true? Xianxia's legs buckled. Cold sweat dripped from his forehead. Your Majesty, this minister, is guilty. Last night I drank too much, acted in folly, and made a terrible mistake. I never intended to disrespect the Duke's daughter, nor would I dare offend imperial authority. He was still trying to hide behind drunkenness. At that moment, a voice rang out. The deputy censor-in-chief of the censorate, Lu Shu, stepped forward to submit a memorial. Your Majesty, this minister has a memorial. Lu Shu had long held opposing political views to Shen Wei. He was a celebrated upright censor, and also a distant maternal relative of Xianxia's mother's family. His stepping out now clearly meant he intended to shield Xianxia. Your Majesty, Lu Shu said. Though the Marquis of Dingbei behaved improperly, in the end it was nothing more than drunken folly, a trivial household matter. How can the Duke, a pillar of the state, speak of resignation over such a petty affair? In this minister's opinion, the Duke has made a mountain out of a molehill, perhaps even seizing the opportunity to pressure your Majesty, which borders on threatening the throne. The moment he finished, voices rose in quick succession across the court. Most belonged to officials aligned with the Dingbei Marquisate or those long unhappy with Shen Wei's influence. Censor Lu speaks with great reason. How can an inner courtyard matter be equated with affairs of state? The Duke may have rendered great service, but that does not grant him the right to be arrogant. Hearing the support, a flicker of hope rose in Xianxia's chest. Yes, exactly this. Define it as a trivial household squabble, accuse Shen Wei of abusing his merit to pressure the throne, and the emperor would naturally avoid punishing him too severely. But they all underestimated the cunning of the old fox that was Shenwei. And they greatly underestimated the cornering words I had prepared for him. Despite Lu Shu's attack, Shenwei remained kneeling, his head still bowed. He let out a mournful laugh. Haha, a trivial household matter, is it? He slowly lifted his head. In his aged, cloudy eyes, tears glimmered faintly. Censor Lu, esteemed colleagues. I wish to seek your guidance on one matter. His gaze swept across the hall, his voice calm yet echoing through the vast chamber. There are many among the court who understand medicine. I ask you. If a man is truly drunk to the point of losing consciousness, drunk like mud, can he still engage in marital relations? Silence swallowed the entire court. Shenwei's question pierced like a needle, popping the flimsy excuse Xianxia had clung to. Several physicians of the Imperial Medical Bureau instinctively nodded, then jolted and quickly lowered their heads. The answer did not need to be spoken. Wine may raise desire, or destroy it. Drink a little and spirits rise, drink too much and the body fails. And if one is so drunk as to mistake people, one's body certainly wouldn't obey. Seeing this, Shenwei let out a cold laugh, his voice turning sharp. If he could still perform such acts, then his mind was at least partly clear. Which means he was not truly drunk. If he was not truly drunk, yet did not enter the bridal chamber, and instead committed lewd acts with a servant. Tell me, is that folly? He suddenly turned towards Xianxia, his eyes flashing like lightning. No. It is not folly. It is indulgence in full awareness, a deliberate humiliation. Marquis of Dingbei, do you dare say otherwise? Xianxia's face turned ghostly pale. His lips trembled, no words came out. What could he say? Claim he possessed supernatural ability, able to perform even when dead drunk. That would only prove him debauched beyond measure. Lu Shu's face darkened, he hurried to retort. Duke Shen's words are inaccurate. Each man's tolerance differs, you cannot generalize. Perhaps the Marquis simply holds his drink well, not intentional misconduct. Not intentional. Shenwei seemed to be waiting for this. He turned, stood facing the dragon throne, and struck his head to the floor again. Your Majesty. He raised his voice. This marriage, from where did it come? Emperor Liu answered with a heavy tone. It was I who granted the marriage decree. Exactly. Shenwei's voice rose, strong and resonant. It was bestowed by your Majesty, a grace of the royal house. This marriage was not merely between my daughter Mingyue and the Marquis of Dingbei. It was imperial favor granted to a meritorious family. And how did Xianxia repay this grace? On the wedding night, beneath the Dayan Phoenix candles. He abandoned the legitimate wife bestowed by your Majesty's own decree, and went to a side residence to commit shameful acts with a lowly servant. Censor Lu, you say this is trivial. Shenwei's voice thundered through the grand hall. This is not a family matter. This is a matter of the state. He did not humiliate Shenwei. He did not humiliate my daughter. He humiliated your Majesty. He humiliated the royal house of the Great Chu. He is telling the entire court and the entire realm that the imperial grace bestowed by the emperor is worth less than a wet nurse in his eyes. Is this the conduct of a subject of the throne? This is contempt for imperial favor. This is the crime of insulting the sovereign. The accusation, insulting the sovereign, was hammered onto Xianxia's head with inescapable force. Lu Shu's face drained of color. Xianxia's turned to ash. And Emperor Liu's expression atop the throne had darkened to the bottom of a cauldron. Silence gripped the entire court. Even the sound of a falling pin would have been heard. Everyone had been shaken by Shenwei's razor-edged words. He had elevated a domestic scandal beyond the inner courtyard. transforming the humiliation of a legitimate wife into contempt for the throne. The nature of the matter had completely changed. Still struggling, Lu Shu tried again. Duke Shen speaks too severely. The Marquis of Dingbei had no such intention, he... Enough. Shen Wei abruptly cut him off. This time, his voice was weary, sorrowful, as though he had aged 10 years in a breath. He looked at no one, lowering his head toward the cold stone floor, speaking slowly. Your Majesty, esteemed colleagues. This old servant has fought all his life. Guarded the northern borders for 20 years. And carries 73 wounds upon his body. The worst of which nearly sent me through the gates of death. Why did this old servant risk his life all these years? Shen Wei's voice was not loud, yet every word struck the heart. It was for the peace and prosperity of Great Chu. For the thousands of lanterns burning in the homes behind me. For the safety of my wife and children. Among the ranks of the military officials, many old generals who had once fought beside him now had reddened eyes. My daughter of the Shen family, from childhood she has been gentle, proper, and well taught, the pearl in my palm. As I waged war beyond the frontiers, I could not always be by her side. I have long carried guilt in my heart. I thought that finding her a good marriage, a husband of integrity, a peaceful household, would make up for all I failed to give her. When your Majesty granted the marriage, I wept with gratitude. My daughter carried with her the honor of our 100-year family and all our hopes for her future as she entered the marquisate. And yet, what was the result? He gave a sorrowful laugh. The result was that she kept the bridal chamber alone, enduring unspeakable humiliation. Censor Lu, Shen Wei turned. You call this a trivial matter. Then let me ask you. If this happened to your daughter, would you still call it small? Lu Shu's face flushed red. He could not utter a word. But Shen Wei did not stop. His gaze swept the ranks of military officials, his tone heavy as iron. Today, it is the daughter of Shen Wei who suffers humiliation. If this is dismissed as a mere household matter, then tell me, whose daughter will it be tomorrow? We have hundreds of thousands of soldiers guarding the borders, fighting to protect this land. They leave their wives and children behind with one belief: that their families will be safe. But if they were to learn that even the daughter of a meritorious duke could be disgraced on her wedding night, that even a marriage granted by the emperor can be trampled upon, what would they think? Would they not fear that while they bleed on the battlefield, their wives and children at home might be violated at any moment? If the hearts of our soldiers waver, and the foundation of the nation shakes because of this, Censor Lu, can you bear that responsibility? Every question struck like a hammer upon the hearts of all present. He was no longer demanding justice for his daughter. He was demanding justice for every soldier in the realm. For the very foundation of the state. When he finished, Shen Wei lowered his head and struck it heavily against the ground. Your Majesty. This old servant cannot bear to let my young daughter spend her life entangled with a deceitful man and a shameless servant. I have fought my entire life for the peace of the nation. Yet I cannot even protect a single peaceful night for my own child. This is the greatest sorrow of my life. I beg your Majesty, grant this old servant permission to lay down his armor and return to the fields. One word of grief, one plea of anguish, filled the grand hall with overwhelming despair. The Duching Hall fell still as death. Everyone understood. The emperor had to make a decision now. The emperor's fury, insolence. The thunderous roar erupted from the Dayan throne. Emperor Liu slapped the imperial table and rose to his feet, chest heaving, face dark with fury, anger so great it could barely be controlled. Part of his wrath was for the Shen family's humiliation. Part for Sua Yunka's contempt of imperial grace. But even more, for the perilous blow to imperial authority, the destabilization of court politics, the threat to the throne itself. Shen Wei's move appeared like retreat. But it forced the emperor into a corner. If he did not punish Xianxia severely, the entire military would grow cold-hearted, shaking the backbone of the empire. If he punished lightly, the imperial dignity would be mocked. Thus, he had to be furious. And it had to be a fury that shook the heavens. Good. Good. What a Marquis of Dingbei. Xianxia, you are bold indeed. Liu pointed at the trembling Marquis, laughing in rage. I grant you an imperial marriage. And in your eyes it is worth less than a lowly servant. You let the Duke's daughter guard the bridal chamber alone. Where does that leave my face? Where does that leave the face of the royal house? You claim drunkenness. I say you are brazen beyond imagination. Xianxia kowtowed frantically, his forehead striking the floor. Your Majesty, spare me. Spare me. This minister deserves death, deserves death. You are deserving of death. The emperor's gaze swept toward Lu Shu and all the officials who had just supported him, cold as ice. And you? You speak of household matters. Of small matters. In your eyes, the loyalty of meritorious families is small. The dignity of the royal house is small. The heart of the army, the foundation of the nation, also small. It seems you have lived in comfort too long. And forgotten who won this country with blood. Forgotten how many soldiers still die on the frontiers. The named officials turned ashen, collapsing to their knees. Lu Shu's sweat poured like rain, too late for regret. He had been so focused on opposing Shen Wei that he forgot the true danger. Offending the emperor himself. When the emperor's fury finally cooled, he slowly returned to the throne. His gaze softened as it fell upon Shen Wei, still kneeling. My loyal minister, rise. This matter happened because I misjudged a man, believed a traitor, and caused you and your daughter such grievance. He descended the imperial steps and personally helped Shen Wei up. This was imperial strategy. Strike with harshness, then soothe with favor. Reassert authority, then win loyalty. You are a pillar of the state. Great Chu cannot be without you. Speak no more of resignation. Shen Wei rose, his expression still steeped in sorrow. Thank you, Your Majesty. He knew, this was the moment to end the act. If he insisted further, it would truly become forcing the emperor's hand. The emperor returned to the Dayan throne, face turning chillingly cold. Transmit our decree. The chief eunuch bowed deeply, whisk in hand. This servant is here. Xianxia, Marquis of Dingbei. Depraved in virtue, defiled his household, disgraced a meritorious family's daughter on the wedding night. And insulted imperial grace, a crime of offending the sovereign. Strip him of the title Marquis of Dingbei. Demote him to commoner status, forbidden from entering officialdom for life. All his fiefs and estates are to be reclaimed at once. The Dingbei Marquis is to be downgraded to a count's household. His younger brother, Xiantian, shall inherit after 1 year of house confinement. With that, Xianxia's future was completely severed. He collapsed onto the floor, face ashen, his eyes hollow. It was over. Everything utterly ended. But the matter was not finished. The emperor's gaze seemed to pierce through palace walls toward the marquisite's rear courtyard. As for the servant woman who defiled the household, Madame Wang. Cold cruelty flashed in his eyes. A shameless creature who wreaks havoc in a noble house deserves no mercy. Order the capital prefecture to seize her immediately. Confine her in a pig cage, drown her in the pond, and display her fate as warning. Let it serve as an example. The edict sealed the outcome. Xianxia was stripped of his ceremonial hat and court robes right inside the grand hall, then dragged out like a dead dog. He did not struggle. He did not beg. He only stared blankly at the dazzling eaves of the palace above him, muttering. Regret. I regret it. But in this world, there is no medicine for regret. Lu Shu and all officials who had defended him were punished with 1 year's salary suspension and ordered home to self-reflect. The court's atmosphere immediately grew upright and severe. Everyone understood one truth. You may offend anyone, but never the Duke of the nation, Shenwei. And certainly not his daughter, who looked gentle but struck with ruthless precision. The decree reached the Dingbei household first. The eunuch's sharp voice echoed above the residence, and the entire estate fell into dead silence. Sua Yunka's mother, the old Madame Sua, fainted on the spot. The household trembled in terror. The once proud Dingbei marquisate had become the greatest joke of the capital overnight. Another edict, the one for Madame Wang, was delivered personally by the capital prefecture enforcers. They kicked open her door without ceremony, dragging her out of whatever phoenix dream she was having. What are you doing? Let me go. I belong to the Marquis. Madame Wang shrieked, still trying to wield her pitiful facade like a weapon. The officer leading them sneered and unfurled the golden imperial decree. By mandate of heaven, the emperor decrees. Madame Wang, a servant woman who defiled her household, depraved in conduct, shall be cast into a pig cage and drowned, as warning to future generations. Carry out immediately. Drowned. Her scream turned into a full-throated howl of terror. No. Impossible. The Marquis will save me. He will. She thrashed wildly, but the officers were all broad and strong. How could a weak woman break free? A filthy rag was stuffed into her mouth. Her limbs were bound. She was shoved into a reeking pig cage. The cage was hoisted onto a cart and taken straight toward the desolate lake by the paupers' graveyard outside the city. Crowds followed, pointing and cursing. So that's the wet nurse who seduced the Marquis. Shameless wretch. She humiliated the Duke's daughter. Serves her right. Drowning is merciful for her kind. Inside the cage, Madame Wang listened to the insults and saw only contempt on every face around her. Terror swallowed everything. She did not understand. How could it have come to this? Was it not just sleeping with a man? Was it not merely seeking favor and status? How had it become drowning in a pig cage? It wasn't until the cage was lifted high above the chilling water, moments away from being thrown in, that she finally understood, through the narrow slits between the bamboo bars. The cold, unfeeling faces on shore did not hate her. They feared the power she had challenged. Her mistake was not ambition. Her mistake was aiming at the wrong opponent. She had provoked a family that held life and death in their grip. The Shin household. And she had underestimated the woman who had never once looked at her directly. Shin Mingwei. Who used her as nothing more than a piece on the board. A tool to topple a century-old clan. Splash. A deafening sound. The pig cage plunged into the icy lake, sending white waves crashing. Moments later, the water stilled, leaving behind only a trail of rising bubbles. A woman who sought elevation through her body disappeared from the world without a trace. Sua Yunka was expelled from the marquisate. No, it should now be called the Count's residence. His younger brother, the newly appointed Count of Dingbei, Sua Yuntian, looked at him without a shred of brotherly feeling, only disgust and coldness seeping into the bone. From today onward, you are no longer one of the Sua family. Our Sua family does not keep a fool who destroys his own future. Get out. Sua Yunka, wearing nothing but coarse, ragged clothing, was shoved out through the side gate by the servants and fell flat onto the ground. The subordinates and so-called friends who once admired him now avoided him like a plague, circling far away as if he were filth. He had no money. He wandered the streets like a stray dog. The luxury of his former life, servants bowing and scraping, the glory of a hereditary marquis, all vanished like smoke. When hungry, he fought beggars for scraps. When cold, he curled up inside the broken corner of a dilapidated shrine. Within just a few days, the once arrogant Marquis of Dingbei turned into a filthy, emaciated beggar. and he began to regret. In his half-delirious dreams at night, he always saw Shen Mingyue in her crimson wedding gown, looking at him with icy indifference. Then drown. The one who regrets is you. Yes. He regretted. He truly regretted. He regretted ever entangling himself with Madame Wang. He regretted treating Shen Mingyue like any other backyard woman he could toy with. He regretted, most of all, believing it was just a small matter. If only on the wedding night he hadn't gone to Madame Wang's courtyard. If only he had comforted his bride first before leaving. If only the next morning, he had sincerely knelt and confessed instead of putting on an act. If only. But the world has no if. One day, as he was begging on the street, he saw a magnificent carriage glide slowly past. The wind lifted a corner of the curtain, and he saw a familiar silhouette. Shen Mingyue. She was no longer wearing her wedding gown, instead dressed in simple, elegant robes. Her face had no powder, yet she looked more radiant than ever. She was smiling softly while speaking with a handsome young man beside her, gentle as moonlight. That man was the 7th prince, Liu, currently the emperor's most favored and valued son. Sua Yunka felt as if tens of thousands of needles pierced his heart, suffocating, shattering pain. That woman should have been his wife. That honor, that gentleness, that union envied by every man in the capital. It had once been his. And he had destroyed it with his own hands. He went mad. He lunged forward, throwing himself in front of the carriage. Mingyue. Mingyue. It's me. I'm Yunka. He screamed until his voice broke, no longer sounding human. Look at me. I regret it. I truly regret it. Please forgive me. Let's start over. But he had not even reached the wheels when 2 towering palace guards stepped forward like iron walls. Get lost. Where did this crazy beggar crawl out from? One vicious kick sent him rolling onto the ground. Inside the carriage, Shen Mingyue seemed to hear the commotion. She lifted her eyes slightly, glancing outside. That gaze was calm. Detached. No hatred, no affection. Just the way one looks at a stranger who has nothing to do with one's life. Then the curtain fell. The carriage continued forward, never slowing. Sua Yunka lay on the frozen ground, watching the carriage disappear, and at last let out a howl like a wounded beast. He had truly gone mad. Driven insane by unending regret. After the divorce, my life had never been so peaceful, or so bright. I was no longer the future mistress of the Dingbei Marquisate. I returned to being Shen Mingyue, beloved daughter of the Duke of the Nation. My father and elder brother, burdened with guilt, cherished me even more. Mother held my hand and said with pride. Mingyue, well done. A daughter of the Shen family never endures humiliation. Rumors spread throughout the capital, but I didn't care. The young ladies who once envied my marriage now looked at me with pity mixed with schadenfreude. They didn't understand. Escaping the mire called Sua Yunka was not tragedy. It was rebirth. I began helping mother manage the affairs of the household, setting everything in perfect order. When free, I read, played the qin, or played chess with father. Father's prestige soared after that court confrontation. Those who once opposed him now kept their heads down. As for the Sua family, silence swallowed them whole. The new count, Sua Yuntian, kept his title, but the family's reputation was in ruins. They no longer dared lift their heads in the capital. As for Sua Yunka, sometimes I overheard servants gossip. They said he had gone mad. Truly mad. Wandering the streets daily, muttering nonsense, calling himself the Marquis, insisting that the Duke's daughter was his wife. Everyone treated him as a joke. When I heard this, my heart felt no ripple. It was his choice. And the ending he deserved. On the other hand, the 7th Prince Liu began visiting our residence more often. He had always been a close friend of my elder brother, so he used to come before. But now, his visits were noticeably more frequent. He always brought a few intriguing little trinkets or rare books that were hard to find. He would discuss state affairs with my father, and then sit with me to play chess or taste tea. His eyes were always gentle like warm jade, carrying a quiet admiration and a tenderness I could easily see through. Mother noticed it too, and her heart secretly rejoiced. She hinted softly, "Mingyue, what do you think of the seventh prince?" I only smiled and said nothing. After one failed marriage, I no longer placed my hopes on love. I no longer yearned for some so-called lifelong soulmate. I only wished to live my life freely and with peace of mind. If fate brought a good bond, I would welcome it. If not, I could still live a brilliant life. The life of Shen Mingyue would never again be defined by any man. Early summer winds carried a touch of warmth. I stood on the high viewing tower of the Duke of the Nation's estate, looking out across half the capital. In the distance rose the magnificent imperial palace. Closer were the bustling markets and lively streets. Smoke from cooking fires and the life of the common world, all lay within my sight. Father stepped beside me, standing shoulder to shoulder. "What are you thinking?" "That this world," I said softly, "in the end, must be faced by one's own strength. Whether woman or man, whether the inner residence or the imperial court. If one wishes not to be trampled, wishes to live with dignity, then one must become strong. Strong in family. Strong in heart. And strong in strategy." Father smiled, deeply satisfied. "You've grown up, Mingyue. Even more remarkable than I ever imagined." He paused, then added, "The seventh prince is a good child. He is sincere toward you." "I know," I said. "But if you do not wish it," Father continued, "I will never force you. The daughter of Xinyu deserves to choose the life she wants." Warmth bloomed in my chest. I turned to look at him. Silver strands already touched his temples, marks of the years he spent worrying for the country. "Father," I said earnestly, "I understand. I will not disappoint you or mother again." The road ahead was still long. Perhaps I would accept Liyu's affection, and become someone who walks beside him, using my talents to carve out a larger world. Or perhaps I would choose never to marry, to remain in the Duke's household, sharing father and my brother's burdens, becoming their firmest support. But no matter which path I chose, I would not regret. Because my life was now wholly in my own hands. Below the tower, bursts of laughter drifted upward. Young maids chasing one another under the sun. The weather was lovely. The wind gentle. I breathed deeply. All the bitterness and humiliation of the past had long since scattered like dust. The sea is vast, fish may leap. The sky is high, birds may fly. Sua Yunka and Madame Wang were merely two small stones on my road. Those stones had been kicked aside. Before me now stretched an open, endless path. And that former husband who had gone mad with regret. He no longer deserved a place in the story of my life. My new life had only just begun. The end.